The stock markets were in the boom in the 90s, the early 90s, 92, 93. And was very keen to sort of say, okay, I want to get into this space. I quickly put up my hand and I say, I know the business, I'll set it up. And that's how we started the broking business. That's how Anand Rathi was born. And by the way, I'm also putting it out there that we as women make for the best investors. When you're investing, it's important to understand there's risk in everything. You know, like the very famous saying, risk hai to ishq hai.
What does Lakshmi do exactly?
So Lakshmi essentially is a money platform for women. We've grown up being told you're good with money if you save money. And that's so deeply embedded that the first thing that a woman wants to do is save money.
But I limit my usage of UPI because my credit cards give me points that can then be converted into so many things these days.
Shonali, you are amongst the 1% of this population who has access to a credit card as a woman. Our head about, what if there's not enough money tomorrow?
So is that why you're saying that women from affluent classes don't think of financial autonomy because the needs aren't that pressing? Hi Preeti, it's nice to see you in our studio today, looking bright and beautiful.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
We were just chatting up over coffee and I just found out how old your daughter is. 32.
You're not supposed to say this on this podcast.
I know, but Preeti is Marwari and she's really exactly the embodiment of breaking stereotypes.
Totally.
Because she's made a life and career for herself. She looks like this as the mother of a 32-year-old Marwari mom.
She looks like a 32-year-old herself. Let me say that.
Exactly.
Yay.
Although we're not against aging. I mean, because I don't look 32, I'm fully pro-aging. Yes.
So Preeti, your journey has been nothing less than fascinating. And we just got to know something completely new about you that we didn't know before. So this thing about, we know you as the founder of Lakshmi, but there is a Preeti Rathi Gupta who started much earlier and started something really big right now. Tell us about that part of your journey.
And before to complete a question, we assume that you were the heiress to the Anand Rathi group. And then you had started your Lakshmi on the side. And then you just gave us this
little
piece of information about Anand Rathi group and stockbroking. So just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, because I love your podcast, because I love the fact that it allows us to be so candid. And, I love the way you say, not your auntie, which is essentially saying, okay, we're stereotyped and let's break all of that. And when I look back, and, this comes very often, a lot of people tell me, you come from privilege. And I have to correct them and say, listen, I built this privilege for myself, okay? So it's not something that I've inherited. So Anand Rathi as a company was started 30 years ago by my father, my husband, and me. What people don't know that I was a stockbroker even before before we started Anand Rathi, right? So, the stock markets were in the boom in the 90s, the early 90s, 92, 93. And I had interned with my uncle who was a stockbroker, and my husband was very keen to sort of say, okay, I want to get into this space because it's very exciting. And I quickly put up my hand and I say, I know the business, I'll set it up. And that's how we started the broking business. And then when my father left his job and he wanted to start, he wanted to become entrepreneur himself. He said, look, broking per se, stockbroking doesn't excite me. You all are already doing it. So let's come together because I want to focus on financial restructuring. That's how Anand Rathi was born. As an individual, his name was already well established in the financial world, which is why we said, okay, that's the perfect name to begin with. So that's how Anand Rathi actually happened. And, the company has been, of course, over the years, then my brother and my sister-in-law, everybody joined in. But it was a company that we started together. And I think when people say that, you've inherited this or, because you have the privilege, I think, for me, Lakshmi is my nth startup. There have been many startups before this because when you start any company that you begin with is a startup. So, just sort of
Yeah, the word has caught on now, but any new enterprise is a startup.
Yeah.
But take us a little bit to your childhood and your growing years. Did you grow up in Calcutta?
Actually, and just before that, actually, one more thing I want to put out there. And when you look back in hindsight, I think as women, we don't really, we shy away from taking credit, from saying, this was something that I was instrumental in doing. And I think traditionally you will find that families or businesses, the highlight is always the men in the business. And I don't think they do it knowingly, but I think it's our fault as much because we don't put our hand up and say, listen, hey, I'm instrumental and I'm building this. Or we don't talk about ourselves too much. We don't come to the forefront. And I hope that is changing because
we have imposter syndrome. Even today, we have imposter syndrome. It's something that afflicts women across industry and countries.
Correct.
And cultures.
It's culture that's coded in our DNA. That, every time a woman has a major professional success in her life, she thinks it's a fluke. She thinks she lucked out. She starts apologizing for it.
Or crediting a lot of people around her.
Exactly.
I credit my family.
I think Kiran and I are pretty much the same, right? At least I know I'm like that. My mom is always correcting me that take credit and zip your mouth. Like, shut up.
Yeah. I think we don't do that. And, which is why I've realized when people ask me, you come from privilege, I have to clarify.
I'm so glad you did. I'm so glad you did because this is something completely new and it puts a completely new perspective to your entire story. Now that I know that you're instrumental in building Anand Rathi as a business, I think of that young Preeti, very honestly, at that age, that courage to get into stockbroking, which is a very male-dominated profession.
Yeah.
This must have been 30 years ago?
31 years ago.
So you were married when you got into it?
Yes.
So you were a young bride, I would imagine.
A very young bride. Child bride.
That is the only Marwari stereotype you stuck to. Everything else, you've broken the ceiling, glass ceiling and all the other ceilings.
Shonali, people ask me that you got married at 19. Was it a love marriage? And I say, yes. My mom fell in love with the boy.
Which is the perfect love relationship.
Love relationship. Yeah. And probably the most important love relationship, I think.
Damaji is preferred.
Yes. So, I grew up, my dad used to work with one of the largest corporates of India, the Birla Group, the Aditya Birla Group. And we moved every 3 or 4 years, we moved cities. So I've lived in Delhi, Ghaziabad, a small town called Veerawal in Gujarat, Calcutta, and then finally Bombay. And it was a very interesting, I realized when I go back to my childhood, like, there wasn't too much thought given on, I have to change school. I have to make new friends. It was just a given. Like you would just adjust. You would just go with the flow, right? Today, when I think of, how as parents, our first concern is, oh my God, how will our child make new friends?
Yes.
They're already set here. But I think what my parents, and they didn't, for them, it wasn't a choice also. But I think what it gave me was a lot of resilience. The ability to make new friends, learn new cultures, new languages. So that was growing up. And then my father, my parents, for some reason at 18 said, okay, it's a good time to get her engaged. So I got engaged at 18, got married at 19.
I think I understand my parents get their kids married off early, even today. My younger one is 17 and my older one is 22. It would be such a relief if somebody else is
I keep asking my parents, did you think
I don't have to worry less about them. I'm just I'm a worrier, about my kids.
Yeah.
It would just be like they're the constant guardian around my child. I know it sounds aggressive, but I'm now speaking purely as a mother.
Yeah.
But, you say this about...
I wouldn't inflict my son on anybody right now, though. Let me just butt it.
No, so, what you said just now before we jump into your early career days, parents today make such a song and dance about even changing your child's nursery school. My father was in the army. I've studied in about 11, 12 schools.
Yeah.
It was par for the course for us to just land up, find new friends and survive, thrive, get bullied maybe, but that's how we grew up.
And nobody came to our rescue. And nobody said, how was your day at school? Like, I don't remember my mother asking. She had 3 children.
It was not even up for conversation, right?
We just grew like weeds, basically.
I proposed to my daughter during COVID because our school was completely online and we were in Dubai for briefly and I saw the schools had opened there. So I proposed to her, do you mind if we move to Dubai for a year or 2 and you study here? There was mayhem. And I was just thinking, what have we done to these kids?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, look, I mean, times have changed, definitely. Um, I remember, I think I've had incidents of getting bullied in school, etc. But I think it's a lot more pronounced now. It is very, very different. But even then, I think we are very, very protective as parents, I feel.
Yeah.
And I
see
have raised
that
namby-pambies.
Yeah. No, and I feel that with my two children. I think my older one, my daughter, because she was the first one, very protective and, just making sure somebody's like, I'm going to drop her to school. I'm going to pick her up from school. All of those, right?
You raised them in Bombay itself.
In Bombay. Yeah. They were, I've lived in Bombay ever since. With my younger one, I just left him on his own, whatever. And I remember my daughter coming back and saying that, Mom, you've really raised me in a bubble. And that recognition, right, that when I go out in the world, I need to be ready for it. So for 2 months, we sent her to HR to study here after school. So
that was a good call.
And that was a good call because you realize the hustle, you realize how to fend for yourself, and how to sort of make yourself heard, make yourself seen, all of that.
And also in studying in India in college, you realize all the struggles that people have overcome to attend that classroom that you're taking for granted.
Yeah.
They're probably coming in a car, chauffeur driven. People are changing trains and coming. They haven't got a seat. They've waited outside the college, hustle to get in. So
Yeah. I mean, from 30 students in a class, you're suddenly with 100 students in a class, right? So that just changes the dynamic. So you have to literally, as opposed to learning being a push, it has to be a pull. You have to, because in a class of 30, there's so much attention on you. In a class of 100, the teacher's not
doesn't even know your
more
name.
intent on what they have to teach, whether how you take it up.
So it's a class of 14.
Yeah. So
at least 30 sounds really novel to me.
Yeah.
So yes, but hearing Preeti talk about her views as a mother is also equally important before we jump into the conversation about financial independence. Yeah.
So Preeti, when you were growing up, your dad was working for a corporate. There was no stockbroking involved.
Not at all.
How did stockbroking come to you? I mean, when did it?
So I was 16 and I genuinely, when I look back, I feel my father was very worried that, I'll start having these affairs or I'll run off or something, because that could be the only logic. But he would call me to his office. So firstly, he changed my college to HR because the timing was 7 to 10. And he said, now please come to office, look at our investments because I want you to understand how investments work, look at our portfolios. That's how my journey started.
You had a head for numbers?
So that's a myth I want to break, right? I don't think investing has anything to do with having a head for numbers.
Oh.
Okay.
It's actually all about discipline. That's it. And that's where I feel that, that's something that I tell women all the time. Women come to me.
My God, this is the first barrier that I have, that I'm terrible with math and no way I'm looking at these numbers.
Yeah.
This is, you can say that again. My God, really?
I mean, wouldn't then all the math professors around the world be richest?
Oh.
That's...
And Preeti, my husband is a postgrad in math and stats. And he keeps telling me Bhai, I'm the boss when it comes to math. And I was the one who marte pass ho gayi.
Correct.
So I've stepped back because I think that is one of the reasons.
Same, it's the same for me.
No, so you don't need to be a math expert. You don't need to have a head for numbers or be a statistics expert to do investing. It's actually completely, the richest people or people who've made money in the markets are people who've followed a particular discipline, who've allowed compounding to happen. And they're really not people who've sort of cracked maths.
Break down the discipline thing that you're talking about. Discipline for what? What does it entail?
And by the way, I'm also putting it out there that we as women make for the best investors.
Lovely.
Really?
Because there's a saying by Warren Buffett, who's known as the
I hear
sort
him
of
being
the
quoted in
expert
maths
of
every day.
Everything. But one of his most important statements that I've taken home is invest like a woman.
Invest like a woman. Break that down for us.
Okay, because we have the right attributes. we're very, very risk aware. We're not risk averse. People say, oh,
okay.
women are risk averse.
Yeah, that's what I
They're
hear.
conservative. But conservative is a good thing. When you're trying to put your money in, you don't want to, you want to weigh
You don't want to
all
be
your
reckless.
options. You don't want to be reckless, and you want to weigh all your options. You want to understand, okay, what is my money going to do once I put it here? So that's the first thing. I think the right attribute of being risk aware. Second, also disciplined. And I see this on, across the board for women on our platform on Lakshmi, that if I have decided I am going to save or invest X amount of money for a particular goal, come rain, come hail, come storm, I will do it. That's what is actually the most important
All right.
attribute when it comes to investing.
So committing to an amount.
Committing and not
And
deterring
following up.
from it, right? You're not shaken by the noise around you. So for example, and if you've decided that you want to buy a car or a house and you've put aside money for it, even if there's noise around you to say, okay, money here is better for a car, there is better for a house, you won't do it. You won't move your money. You know that you've taken that decision, whether it's for your child's education or it's for a car or a home or any financial goal. It could be buying a bag for yourself. Right? You'll just, in your head, you know that this money is meant for this. It's earmarked for this.
Is it because women also are very careful about weighing every possible option before they make a decision? Do you think
So that is one, which is risk aware.
Okay.
Second is the discipline. Now, tomorrow, if somebody comes and tells you, oh, Kiran, you've put money here, but listen, you are getting X amount extra return there. It won't shake you.
No.
Because in your head, the money that you've put will help you achieve this goal in X amount of time. Because we don't listen to the noise around returns. We listen to how can this money achieve your goal. So it's very financial goal driven.
Okay.
Which helps us keep that discipline.
Okay.
Right? So these are important attributes for any good investor. I mean, if you look at, investing as an art, what they've termed as an
Oh,
art.
it is an art.
Definitely.
It's actually not an art. It's
No.
a very simple,
It's a skill.
simple discipline to follow.
Okay.
I think people have just made it sound very complicated. That, you need to know numbers, you need to have time to listen to, business channels.
Can I just
You
tell
need
you,
to-
Preeti, my husband, because he handles family office, all he does is read on the iPad or watch the news. And I told him that, normally in businesses or a 9-to-5 job, you have set hours. He says, yeah, but in investing, you do not have set hours because everything impacts the markets. So what do
Sure.
you have to say to that?
So, look, I think there are two types of investing. One is very, very active investing, where then you take calls on an everyday basis on where your money is going to be invested. You want to move it from this market to this market. And then there is passive investing, where you're saying, I have decided these are my goals and I'm going to just keep my money, for these goals.
Right.
I've decided where it'll go. I'll review it maybe once in 3 months.
Okay, like a
Right.
typical professional would do.
No,
right?
also there's a difference between one, investing, creating your portfolio versus running maybe a family office where you look at more asset classes. If you're looking at more active, like if you're investing in new age companies, if you're doing private equity, if you're doing venture capital, all of these forms require you to understand, okay, where will you allocate? But to invest your money for your goals or for your wealth creation actually doesn't require active investing
Okay.
at all.
Okay.
And we've compared, we run a very large wealth management company in Anand Rathi, and we've compared the returns. Do people make more in returns when they do active investing? There's no proof for that.
Really?
So you're actually spending a lot of time, a lot of effort. Are you actually getting a
Better return.
better return?
Mm.
Nothing to show that, right? But I am making a differentiation here, Shonali, between, running your own portfolio, creating your wealth versus running a family office, because that typically
Okay.
you need to obviously,
Be more
look at,
invested.
and also look at newer asset classes, maybe.
Sure.
you
I
know,
understand. I
Which
got
which you don't when
I-
you
I-
have to
I
create your
got it.
wealth.
Yeah.
Could you also expand a bit about the compounding? Because I keep hearing this all the time from my husband.
Yeah.
Compounding. And, we don't know about it. We really don't understand
By
it.
the way, we've all studied compound
We've
interest in
studied
school,
it
right?
and forgotten it.
And unfortunately, schools don't teach you the practical aspect of compounding. What does compounding really, how does it apply to your life in your real life? Compounding is essentially whatever return, so 100 rupees you've put in and you get in a savings bank account, you'll get a 2.5%, 3% interest. In a fixed deposit, you'll probably get 6% return, right? In maybe equities, you will get anywhere from 12 to 10 to 12 or 13, 14, depending on, how you've invested. Now, it's essentially saying if you've got a 3%, 100 becomes 103. The next year, you get another 3% return on the 103.
Okay, that builds
Versus
up.
in a fixed deposit, it's 100 becomes 106 and you get 6% return on that 106. In equities, if you put your money, if it's 100 and it's become 112, then you get 12% return on 112. So the return on the money that you've invested, the way it compounds, obviously that return has a very important aspect to play. So compounding is literally like think of it as a magnifying glass,
Okay.
right? If your return is less, it's a narrower magnifying glass, which will grow in, that'll be the funnel. Versus if the return is large, that's how your money grows. So compounding is essentially leaving your money there for the return on your return to continuously help your money grow. It's like baking a cake. When you put a cake to bake, you just say, okay, now I'm going to leave it there and let it
Till it
cook because
cools,
I've put in the right ingredients. I know how much time it'll take, maybe 30 minutes for the cake to bake or 35 minutes. And once I've done the right thing in terms of ingredients, I know that it's going to be baked well.
So this is Warren Buffett's magic mantra.
Compounding actually, and what we don't realize, a lot of women tell me, but investing in equities is risky.
Risky, yeah.
And I'm like, where do you put your money? And she says, fixed deposit.
Those are the worst places.
Right?
Even
And
I know that.
Yeah, but what happens to your
It's
money in
safe.
fixed deposit? Safe.
Safe.
Right?
That's
But
the-
rupees devaluing so rapidly.
So I'll tell you what, I think what we don't realize is by putting money into places where it's not beating inflation,
Yes, exactly.
which
Exactly.
means, your cost of living is increasing at a particular pace. If your money doesn't grow at the same pace, you're anyways losing money.
Correct.
So that's a known risk that you've taken. So therefore, it's very important to understand that it is, like if you're traveling and if you have to cross the road, you have to cross the road.
Of course.
You can't say it's risky, I'm not going to cross the road.
Yep.
Accidents happen, right? But
How
how
it's
do
like
you,
buying an expensive dress and hanging it in your closet, saving it for a good day, but you've outgrown it in the meanwhile.
in the meanwhile? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
Biggest
so when
risk
you
ever.
cross the road, you look at the traffic lights and you say, okay, I know I have to get to the other end, but I will follow the protocol. I will look at those lights and I will reach safely.
Okay.
Similarly, when you're investing, it's important to understand there's risk in everything. Like the very famous saying, risk hai to ishq hai. Kinds.
Acha, you should
risk
put
lena.
Lakshmi ka t-shirt bana le.
risk hai to ishq
Risk
hai.
hai to ishq hai.
So risk is it's an element in our lives that exists, right? I mean, and sometimes I wonder that as women, when people tell us that women don't take risks. And I'm like, I've given birth to a child. Every woman who does that has
I
taken the
know.
biggest risk of her life.
I
right?
know.
Absolutely.
And
So
letting
I
a
love
child
that.
out of your sight for the first time. You know what a risk that is. Only mothers understand that.
Yeah, so it's not that, but I think we're aware. We'll make sure that we have the right knowledge and do this. So, I mean, back to your point of saying, why compounding is important, why beating the inflation is important, and why it's important to get the right knowledge to make sure that your money, and which is not to say you don't keep your money in fixed deposits. You keep some money in fixed deposits.
Not
But
all
if you're
of
going to
it.
keep all your money in fixed deposits,
Yeah.
then you are anyways losing the value of your money. So you have to do that something which will enable you to get more returns than inflation over a long-term period.
So what does
Go ahead.
what does Lakshmi do exactly?
That you can download and you can do all things money on it. The way we've realized the perfect journey for a woman to manage her money is to do the things that come most intuitive, which is payments. Today, every woman is doing UPI payments. So you start with UPI payments. We've built in an expense tracker there.
Okay.
Because
That's nice.
yeah.
Need
So
that.
I think I've realized that saving for us, we've grown up being told you're good with money if you save money. And that's so deeply embedded that the first thing that a woman wants to do is save money.
Is
So
this
we've-
an India thing? A worldwide
It's a
thing.
worldwide thing. I think we've all been told, you as a woman, your role is to manage household expenses in a very, very effective
also save
manner
it.
and save money.
Inside the cupboard, in the sarees.
Yeah, wherever.
gold
Wherever.
coins,
In gold
wherever.
coins.
Yeah.
I mean, like
So
traditionally.
the reason we were doing that because we were told that you have to save money. Like if something happens, then you have to have, you are the, then you are the Lakshmi. Right?
That's right.
You are
Correct.
responsible
Yes.
for bailing the family out.
So I think that's deeply embedded. So we realized we built in. And also with UPI, what's happening is, I think we land up spending without realizing how much we're spending. When we
Very
were carrying cash, there was always, my money's got over.
Of course. My God, yes.
With UPI, you don't realize where you're spending. So we built that expense tracker, which also tells you what are the categories you're spending on, where are you spending more. You can set your own budgets.
So does it pop up or something to say?
It does.
This week you have spent.
It does.
And now you are broke.
It doesn't say you're broke. It says, okay, listen, this month you've spent so much more here. Or you can set your limits and it'll tell you, okay, you've gone over your limit in this spending.
I love this.
But this can be used everywhere.
See, I love how women love this.
The way
most.
GPay can be used everywhere, this can be used everywhere.
Everywhere.
Lakshmi Pay?
Everywhere.
Okay.
Everywhere.
Done.
So it's India's
You
first
sold me
UPI
already.
Yeah, it's India's first UPI for her. And people, again, when they ask me, they've always asked, Riddhi and me, Riddhi, my co-founder, and us, why do you need a separate platform for women? It's to understand our behavior with money, right?
Because psychologically, we are not the same as men.
We're not. And by the way, what I was saying earlier, that money management is actually it's not a mathematical mathematical science. It's more a behavioral science.
Right.
And therefore, you have to build it to the behavior of women and money, which is it's starkly different to that of men. Like I gave you examples, right? We will not look at, you're not chasing returns. You're not saying, I'll make 30% returns, so therefore I will. Even if you are chasing returns, you'll weigh your risk and you'll say, okay, to make that 30% return, what is the risk I'm taking?
It is behavioral, like
right?
you say, yeah.
So it's very, very behavioral. So which is why even UPI, people ask us why UPI is UPI. What is UPI for her? But it's to understand what women are looking at when they're spending that money.
Yeah.
Even then the key, the underlying this is how do I save more, right? It's never how do I spend more. So bringing that in, building that as an expense tracker, rewards. I mean, when you go to a lot of other platforms, you get rewards which are like scratch this card and you get a shaving
Rubbish.
kit and you're like,
which you never
I don't
use.
even scratch those cards anymore.
Yeah.
So this
My
is a
son
waste of my
scratches
time.
because
Son does
exactly
that.
right.
Yeah.
So here we've also, the way we reward is helping you build your wealth, and you have to download the app to see how we enable that. Essentially the rewards come as gold. So
Okay.
you get a little bit of gold grows over a period of time. So you're consistently, instead of getting a
Yeah.
5 rupee cashback that you spend anyways.
True.
So helping you save more, grow richer with payments as well.
But I limit my usage of UPI because my credit cards give me points that can then be converted into so many things these days.
Correct.
And I wonder why UPI cannot up their game, payment gateways, so that people are inclined to using that more. Now, today, if I have to GPay somebody 10K and swipe my card for it, I prefer swiping my card for it, Preeti.
Shunali, you are amongst the 1% of this population who has access to a credit card as a woman.
Yeah.
If you look at the large population of our country, they don't, right? And UPI is actually a great way for them it's the first step to getting into the, digital financial economy.
Correct.
And even if for yourself, you look at it like, yes, credit card will give you points, it'll give you all of those. But today, if you give somebody 10 rupees, you're not going to swipe your credit card.
No, not at all. I do use GPay, but I was just talking about the points thing.
Yeah.
So how many downloads do you have so far?
So we have now almost 1.7 million downloads of the app.
It'll become 1.72. No, 702.
Yes, two more after
more.
this. No, so then we enable. So once you're saving your money, we enable a lot of literacy. That's actually been our key pillar.
Through the app?
Through the app. So we do a lot of live sessions. We have a community where you can come ask any question. Did you realize, by the way, one of the things that women, because for me it came that was the privilege that I had, which was that money conversations at home were not limited to just men.
Yeah. Also, if you ask men money questions, they give you that look first.
Yeah, rehne do. Like, let it be. I'm taking
Main dekh
care.
raha hoon na?
Or
मैं
like,
हूं ना.
नहीं, not like that. Like, what a stupid question. Look.
That is the secondary one. And money conversations at home when you were growing up, what were they like?
So I think, see, we come from a very, very humble background. And therefore, and I will give a lot of credit to my parents for this, where we actually spoke about our financial goals of, what are we going to save money for? And therefore looking at our spending and saying, okay, what is important, weighing the needs and wants, very, like, it was something that was deeply embedded in us, as I think it is in every family, where you at least talk about, okay, this is a need, you have to get it. Wants, you sort of, weigh, and you say, okay, do I need to get it or not?
Because what I'm trying to get at is how these conversations shape girls. We don't have these conversations at the dinner table.
Yeah. So, and a very explicit messaging to family members is, if you're a daughter, at least now we are saying, okay, you need to learn how to earn your money. But the explicit messaging to a son or a boy is that you have to also manage your finances, you are responsible for the financial security of the family.
Entire family, your parents, your wife,
everything.
your children.
Yeah. I mean, why is it not an explicit messaging to daughters as well, to girls, that you have to manage your own financial security? If you're going to have a child, that child's education is as much your responsibility. But we don't say it enough. And
it's not changing even now in India?
I think a very small percentage of families.
Because middle-class women are working today, and hopefully they are raising their daughters to be financially.
So there's a difference between being financially independent, which is earning your money, and financially secure, which is creating your own wealth, your financial security. That if tomorrow something happens, and I think we as a society, we're dynamically changing. Today, India has about 70 million single women, which could be women deciding to get married late because they're pursuing a career, and the parents not pressurizing, oh, shadi kar lo. The number of divorces that are happening, separations that are happening, and just that women typically live on an average 4-5 years longer than men. So today that's equivalent to the population of England and Britain put together. And if you are not giving your child, your girl child, all the tools, first of all, that messaging and all the tools to say that, this is your journey. Just like you teach them, go and earn money. You need to teach them that this is, or you need to nudge them to say, listen, you are financially responsible for yourself.
That's a very important
for every
message.
aspect of your life. But we give that explicit messaging to the boys.
Preeti, you just said a little while ago that your family sat and had open conversations.
Yeah.
Do you advise, and what age onwards, boy or a girl, that families, irrespective of their financial status, sit and discuss their family's financial goals with their children?
So absolutely. I think, the wealth management of a family cannot be just one person's responsibility. Also, it cannot be just one person's goals. As a woman, you might have your own goals, financial goals. We are like 4 wheels of a car. If everybody doesn't move in the same direction, then obviously, things will go haywire. Having money conversations with children, with your spouse, with partners is probably the most important thing. We talk about everything under the sun. We shy away. When we're talking about money, we tend to send children away and say, acha, this is not something that you need to know.
Yeah.
But I think early on, putting in this entire aspect of,
this is how much we have, and this is what we should say.
Maybe you don't say it to a 6-year-old, but you definitely tell a 6-year-old,
maybe,
save money. Once you save, then this is the difference when you put it into your piggy bank. Instead of that, if you put it into a bank, what happens? Slowly creating, for example, today one
Demat
of the
accounts for your kids at a certain age.
highest expense today for an average Indian family is education of the child.
Correct.
Right? Get them to participate in it, to understand.
Lovely.
Early on, say, this is what we are saving for your
college.
education.
Yeah.
So they understand two things. One, that there is, that if I want to go to the UK, I want to go to the US, it's very easy to say, but to understand, what does it mean? What is, to go to the US, the kind of money you need for your education is very, very high. But to understand that, yes, I have to play a part in it, not by adding to that money, but at least working towards it. So I know, okay, this is the corpus that is required.
Yeah.
But early on, giving them an insight into saying, 12, 13-year-old to understand, okay, this is how we are building a corpus for your education, right? Is very important.
This is a very, very
important.
Because otherwise, what you're doing is you are bringing entitled children and saying, "Acha, you just have to ask, and we will scamper,
Somehow,
we will do."
yeah.
And it's not easy for a family to put together. I mean, average Indian family today has to spend about 35 to 40 lakhs on every child's education. This is just in India, right? And
That's
everybody
Of course,
aspires to send their
tuition,
children.
sports lessons, this, that, and the
Everything.
other.
Everything. So bring them into that conversation. It's very important. Also to say these are our financial goals. When men say, okay, we're having money conversations, it's okay, you don't need to get involved. And then if they complain that, oh, you don't understand, you're spending so much money.
Exactly.
But if I know that, this is what we as a family aim to do. Say we want to, even if it's building a corpus for, investment, if it's building your retirement fund, it is building a wealth plan, it's buying a home. If I've bought into it, if I know what the plan is, then I'm very mindful of how I'm spending and saving my money as well. So I think it's a very family conversation which we don't have, which we should have.
I'm going to digress a bit and ask you this, that even today there are families that women who look at jewelry as an asset. I'm not talking about just gold, because we know how the gold and silver prices have gone. I'm talking about buying gold and diamond and emerald and ruby jewelry and thinking of it as an asset creation. First question. Second, this whole thing, and I know that we again sound elitist, but I'm talking about what's happening in the world around us.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm participating in it. This whole thing that Birkin is a good investment. Isn't that money invested in equities or stocks? Definitely, buy stocks in LVMH. Or versus saying, this is my Birkin bag and I actually bought it because it's an investment, because one day when I choose to sell it, somebody will inspect it and, rule out the scratches and whatever wear and tear and then give you some money for it.
Yeah.
So sometimes women say to fool themselves that I'm making jewelry and buying myself expensive bags as an investment, and sometimes they really believe it. Can you just shed some light on this?
Great point. And thank you, Shonali, for bringing this up, because I think this is a question that I answer more with, and it is an elitist question, but the jewelry part is not. Because, see, we come from this overhang of, safety, security, which as a woman, I was taught by my grandmother, my mother, that the one thing you can rely on is money that you've put aside or your jewelry. Because it's something, Sridhan actually comes from that mindset that this is money of your own. At any point in time, for a rainy day, if you need money, this is what you will
traditionally,
relax.
it comes from a time before diamonds.
Yeah.
When gold was all there was.
Yeah. Because the only asset classes you were investing in was land and gold.
Correct.
Jewelry.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but from there to now, so much has changed. And yet our knowledge we've not upgraded our knowledge, right? And I actually tell everybody that there's nothing wrong with buying Birkins, there's nothing wrong with buying jewelry, but there is a financial pyramid that you have to, sort of keep in mind when you're investing or so-called investing into whatever you like. And the first layer of that financial pyramid is first to build your safety nets. Do you have your emergency fund in place? Are you building your financial freedom? I don't call it a retirement fund, because for women, there's no one-time retirement. We'll retire, we'll take a sabbatical when we have children born, or when we want to write a book, or you'll take that time off, right? So there are many mini retirements. So I call it more like a financial freedom fund. So have you built these, have you got your insurance in place? So you know that at least your basic financial needs are taken care of. Then the next layer of that pyramid is literally saying my financial goals, right? Which is, if it's a home, it's my children's education, it's just, wealth creation, whatever are your financial goals. Unfortunately, your Birkins, etc., you cannot rely on to say, okay, this will definitely get me close to this return, right? So for those, you need very strong not traditional, but very strong sort of financial tools, which will be between your debt and equity investments, right? Whether you do it through mutual funds or direct stocks, etc. Once you've built those, then that top of that pyramid where you want to get diamonds, you want to buy Birkins, you want to do private equity investment, because that's the money that then whatever happens with it, it doesn't matter.
That's it.
Right? Because it's not, I can't wear mutual funds in my ears. I can't carry mutual fund on my hand if I'm somebody who's fond of good bags, right?
Of course.
But you don't, when you buy those, you keep in mind that, yes, I'm buying it. It's a luxury spend and I can afford it because I've taken care of my financial goals.
Yeah, it's not some investment or some asset creation.
It could be an investment, but you don't know what return you'll get on it.
Exactly. So it's not a reliable investment.
Correct. So, and those are your luxury spends. And I think once you've built these two layers, my problem with women, and I'll say
do you encounter this question that I asked you? Do you think people actually live by this?
Yeah, a lot of people, and I will actually put it out there. I think the richer women get, the more affluent they get, they completely let go of the bottom two parts of this pyramid.
Really? They're not focusing on those at all?
They're not. I mean, today, you ask a very affluent woman and say, do you have an emergency fund? And in her head, she's like, no, but we have a lot of money. Why do I need an emergency? There's enough. But I have seen cases where, a marriage has fallen apart and a woman has no idea where her money is. She doesn't have money even to fight her own legal case. Now, as a woman, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have your safety nets in place.
But what about women who are not working at all, who are raising children, housewives, traditional women, who don't even have the qualification to get a job, or it's too late in their lives?
Yeah.
And they're living off their husband's earnings. So how do they create that safety net individually for themselves?
So, which is where I think whether you're a homemaker, and I say this all the time, if you're a homemaker by choice, then you know that you're contributing something for building that home, the family, right? And I would never say you're living off somebody. You're actually, your partner probably has the ability to do what they're doing because you are holding fort here.
That's right.
I think we all, even if I'm getting household expenses, if I don't work, but I know that I have this amount of money, which is household expense.
Save from there.
I always save. Every woman saves. She saves that money and that's kept somewhere. It could be in FDs, it could be in a cupboard, it could be jewelry, whatever. But also these conversations are very important. Does it mean if I'm not earning, do I not have a right to create an emergency fund for myself? I think money conversations.
Actually, women need to start even asking for not just emergency. This is the value of what I bring to this family. And exactly, like it should be not a salary, but women should be allowed to have income for themselves as homemakers.
That is an ideal situation, I think.
I feel that we just don't have these conversations. I mean, as a woman, and how many women actually realize that most women start managing money when something bad happens. Now, if this conversation was had before you get married, you have this conversation with your partner that this is how I think about money. These would be my money goals. So that it doesn't become a reason of conflict in your marriage, which most 60% conflicts in marriages are around money, by the way. And then once you are, I think it's very important to have, in every marriage, have, your money, my money, and our money.
Yeah.
And having a very candid conversation around it. So, I was, like I was saying, I think that the more affluent women get, they tend to forget about these two things or to actually get an understanding. It's an assumption that, okay, this is taken care of.
Correct.
Right.
But don't assume it. go and find out where is your wealth, where is it, how much is invested, where are your your financial goals also included in it? Personally.
Yeah.
So you're having these conversations with women in real life?
We are, and I tell women, I mean, all of us take our fitness these days so,
I know.
we take it like
It's becoming a religion.
physical fitness is so important. But what about your financial fitness? Physical fitness, you can't tell your partner or your husband or your brother or your father, please work out for me
Yeah.
and
I wish.
Yeah, I wish. or follow this diet
Outsource
for me.
it.
Yes,
Outsource
outsource.
it, yeah.
You can't, you don't, right? So why are you outsourcing something which is actually the biggest enabler in your life
Yeah.
to somebody else? And again,
I think it just sounds like a formidable concept to women once they overcome this mental block and start with baby steps.
No, I'm just putting it out there, even on this platform, and we say it all the time that firstly, it's a behavioral science. As a woman, you are best suited to do it. Third, if you've not taken care of these two blocks of life, your financial blocks of life, which is your emergency, your safety nets, and your financial goals, you are really out there in the dark. I think that ignorance is not bliss for sure.
So, Preeti, if a woman, say somebody of our age, who is not bothered with investment at all, has a certain amount of money but wants to start, what would you say? A, first get on the Lakshmi platform.
Yes.
Second,
attend our boot camp.
Attend our boot camp.
It's a physical boot camp, or you do it
No, we
online?
do it online. We do
Online.
also physical. We do. I mean, physical is always a lot more fun because there's a lot of.
But you do it
face-to-face
physical
interaction.
as well.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. But online is easier for women because wherever you are, you can attend. But it's a very interactive, live boot camp. So you attend that. I think start with basics. I just feel that also in our head, we feel that I need X amount of money to start investing.
Yeah.
Begin small.
No
Today,
money is too small.
Yeah, no money is too small. You can begin with 100 rupees. And today we go and spend 10,000, 20,000 on a dress, on a bag, on anything, right? I mean, some of our bags don't even come in 10,000, 20,000, right?
Yeah.
But we'll just go and spend that money.
Yeah.
But if you actually invest even like 10,000 or 20,000, we think, oh my God, should I do it?
Yeah.
I
You know
don't
what
know.
is happening, Preeti? The thing is, over the past 20 years, the number of material temptations outside
Yeah,
are just growing. Okay.
correct.
So it's not just your shoes and bags, it's now heritage saris and it's Sabyasachi and it's this and that. So I'm saying that, it's like a child being inside a toy store or candy store, having this much money and not knowing what Hamley's toy to buy.
Right.
Because I think fewer choices, like I, for one, I hate buffets, okay? You go to the long thing with 80 dishes and I just don't know what to eat. Give me a la carte and a plate with 3 things. I prefer that. So it really is something that every time you decide to put some money aside for investment, there's some temptation that is, enticing you.
Yeah.
You need to upgrade your car. See, we're living in an India of excesses now, at least after the economy opened up and everything compared to what our mothers lived with. What could they spend on?
Yeah.
So that's the other problem that this is...
Which is where the discipline is very handy. I'm an avid Instagram shopper. Okay. And Instagram loves me equally because it
same.
keeps sending me these,
Same.
shop this, shop this, shop this. I think life is about living in the today as well. And I think the only way that you can, without guilt, buy what you want is when you know that you have done the first important bit, which is saved and invested.
Correct.
And that's the discipline, right?
Right.
Now, if you don't even know what you're saving for, what do you have to save for?
True.
Then you don't know what you're doing. If I know that, okay, these are my financial goals, I'm saving. So whatever is my earning, I know that X, I've removed this percentage as a rule, as a discipline into investment.
And then I can play around with the rest of it.
And whatever's there
But
is...
I have a tip for somebody because I'm really consciously trying to cut back on consumption.
Yeah.
Look at the state of the planet. Also, we have no spaces in our closet and everything. And trends are changing so quickly. So I get a lot of pop-up ads on Instagram. You drag it to your cart and you leave it there for one day.
Yeah.
Finished. You don't even want to look back and buy it. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
That's a
impulse
beautiful
purchase.
hack.
Even for 300 rupees. I am not kidding. You drag it and add it in your cart and you're like, there's too much else going on in my life. I look at it in a day or two. And
The
the
big
feeling
spends,
has
you should always sleep over it. You should leave it in your cart.
No, because
etc.
today I watched a reel on Instagram. It was showing closets, exploding with clothes and tables heaving with things in people's homes. And it said like garbage stuff, like a pile of junk jewelry and whatnot. That all of this could have been money.
Yeah.
And all of this could have been money invested. And that really struck home that one extra t-shirt and one extra pant and hairband and earring and this.
Which is why it's so
Mass
important to do
consumerism.
this financial fitness boot camp, because you realize the opportunity cost. You know that it's not just money. Today, if you've bought something which you've discarded, say,
which
in
is
2
what
years down
typically
the
is
line,
happening.
or you've never worn, sometimes never
Yeah,
used.
It just lies.
But if that was invested, it'll actually be compounding, growing,
Wow.
worth so much more,
Yeah.
right? But if we don't know about it, I think there's no way to look at that opportunity cost. So understanding that is actually the key to saying, and by the way, this is I think it's super true for our children, because forget we live in a materialistic world, but with them,
They are born in a materialistic world.
and there's so much peer pressure, there's so much,
It's coming at them from everywhere.
everywhere. So if they have, the only way to keep your head on your shoulders about money is to say, okay, I have a discipline, I'm going to save so much, then I know that, okay, if I, and then take that call that, okay, how do I weigh my spends? Where is my money going? And if I don't spend it here, how much will it be worth in 5 years, in 10 years, right?
Yeah.
All of
Once
those
you get a chaska, you see your money grow, you get that.
you get that.
And what do you say that once we've done your boot camp, what next?
So start big and small. I think a lot of women falter. The learning happens, but they don't take the step. They don't take that action.
Okay.
And take that action with small amounts of money.
Okay.
Even if because I think we fear making a mistake.
Yeah, we do. Because we know we're never going to hear the end of it from our
But if you
husbands.
start small, then you'll be okay with making a mistake.
It's this fear of being judged.
Yeah, because you'll get told this
But
over
we
and
are
over
judging
again.
ourselves. so
We're
much,
judging
forget anyone
ourselves,
else.
forget anybody
That
else.
inner voice.
Yeah. Which is saying, oh my God, like, I told you, you don't have a head for math. Don't do
Do
this.
you have
Right?
an inner voice after your accomplishments?
Of course, I have an inner
Still?
voice. Everybody has it. And it takes you so much to sort of say, now I don't care. I am what I am. And, it's okay.
I'd love to meet your daughter and see that with such a financially aware mother who understands so much about human behavior, how has she turned out with, and what's her relationship with money?
Oh, you'll be surprised if you meet my 2 kids. I think they are the ones who even today who will tell me, Mom, maybe too expensive. I don't think you should buy that.
Fab.
They're like, my children are, people ask me that, what have you taught them all of this financial acumen too much? Because they are so, sort of so pragmatic about it.
But osmotically, they've picked it up growing up, I think, seeing, observing.
So I think they understand, I think just the authenticity of life. My daughter was, till today, she's 32. But you take her to buy a branded bag, she will refuse. She still lives in her Zara, H&M.
That's
because
amazing.
for her, she's like, this is good. I don't need to, spend. She still, and they have this innate sense of responsibility to themselves to saying that, I have to make my life, I have to make my
That's amazing.
savings, I have to
not give
invest.
into peer pressure.
Not at all.
Especially right now, when luxury consumption is so in your face, and also luxury goods are costing ridiculous amounts today.
Yeah.
It's not even justifiable. And people are still splurging, they're still spending money. So in such an environment, to resist it and make practical choices is fantastic. Well done.
Yeah. So I think both my kids are, I sort of, they are my inner voice sometimes.
Can I send my son across for some lessons from them?
Please do. And even my son, if you see, he's 24 now. But when I look
What does
at
he
them,
do?
it's,
What is he doing?
So he studied at Imperial. He did engineering, came back. He worked with a company called Ripple, which is a blockchain cryptocurrency company in London. 2 years, then realized opportunities here. So he's come back. He's joined Anand Rathi. He works in investment banking, institutional equities. It's been a year and some time.
And is their daughter working with you guys as well?
So she was working with EY Parthenon for almost 8 years.
Okay.
And then decided, I think we pushed her. We said, okay, now time for you to become entrepreneur as well. So she's setting up a business in the UK now.
Lovely.
Oh, she lives in the
So
UK.
she lives in London.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
London.
But you've not, I mean, sometimes, like when you look at them, you'll really find that they're just so, I think that money conversation, which we've had with them early on,
Yeah.
to say that way, how, like, look at your financial goals and then say, okay, where am I going to spend? I think for children, I think it's going to be a very tough life if we don't inculcate this very, very early on or along the way. They're going to have a hard time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
You've got this huge database of women in Lakshmi. And what kind of trends have you seen changing over the years since you started Lakshmi in terms of women's attitude towards money, how much they're prepared to put in, what kind of instruments they're looking at now?
So I think, like I said, and this was actually another aha moment. One, I realized that the richer women get, the less inclined they are towards managing their own financial security.
No
It's
financial
very sad.
autonomy.
Yeah, it's very sad, but that is true. We'll speak about everything else. You do a session on makeup, you'll have so much interest. A session on health, fitness, styling, you'll have so much interest. But when a session on money, they feel, acha, somebody's doing it. It's not a problem. I think what we've realized is the mass middle income of India. That's where women are taking so much autonomy.
Great.
And they will actually be the change makers because they actually want the best for their children, best standard of life for themselves. They are the ones who are going, who are going an extra mile.
I also think that the demands on wealthy women are greater in the sense of living for appearances. Middle class women are not going to be attending makeup classes, fitness classes.
Oh, you'll be surprised.
Oh, they are?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Totally.
Uske
They
baad
are
bhi-
with it, but they are very aspirational. I just, I don't know whether you want to put it out there, but I really do want to say that, I think as women who come from wealth or who have a certain, if we are in the top 1-2% of the society, and if we are not, women around us, whether it's our daughters, mothers, sisters, staff, we ideally should be role models for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
To say that, listen, I manage my money.
Yeah.
I save my money like this, right? I put it into equities. That's how my money grows. But unfortunately, that's not happening. And I think, I also feel that, like I said, we live on assumption. We go to sleep. There's no worry in our head about, what if there's not enough money tomorrow?
So is that why you're saying that women from affluent classes don't think of financial autonomy because the needs aren't that pressing?
They feel the need is not pressing. And also I agree to your point that there's so much more that we are keen to do, live for appearances.
Glass bubble.
All of that.
Do up your home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually a lot of things
Get ponytail for the facelifts.
Really? Is that what it's
No,
called? Yeah.
not in India. But I'm just saying that
Yeah.
affluent women, their priorities are very different from the priorities of women who have to keep home and hearts together and plan their kids' marriages and their education.
No,
But
I'm
also,
just, I
do
think
they
it's
have
very,
the money? Do they get the money in their hand to save?
I mean, I've had questions where, I've met women from very affluent backgrounds who'll say, I don't get to ask money questions at home.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's not encouraged.
Yeah.
And I
Really?
think women in the mass middle class have more autonomy.
These are working women or homemakers?
Even homemakers.
Even homemakers. They
Once
manage
she
the money.
saved money, once she saved her 10,000 of the month, she decides what she wants to do with it. Right? So I feel the mass middle income, to your question, is I think women are getting more autonomy. They are keen to learn. They're very keen to say, how can my money go further? How can I, live better? Or my
Yeah.
children's education, I can do better. So that's definitely very rapidly changing. And I think a lot in the country has enabled, like for example, UPI has enabled that, right?
That's
Your
right.
fear,
Of going to the
e-commerce
bank and withdrawing money, that whole process is
not, that's taken away. We're buying stuff from Amazon. So we are doing money transactions
Listen,
online.
Women now, middle class India, the gigolo business is doing very well.
Really?
Yes, because women have
That's
financial
news.
autonomy. We did a podcast on it, so I know all this.
Oh, wow. That I
Yes.
didn't know.
Because women are like not
And they're doing payments.
they're doing payments for like they're
Yeah.
outsourcing physical satisfaction and excitement. So
look, I think as a
that is all
society,
UPI enabled.
or cash maybe, we don't know.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that like women are taking their money out.
I think it is just financial autonomy,
Yeah.
which I think middle income women are taking on more, with more enthusiasm
Right.
than the affluent women are. And I think that's where a lot in our society is changing.
Yeah.
We see women on our platform. Once she started investing, she's only learning more. She wants to make sure, okay, now I've understood this. I'm going to put this in this goal. I'm going to put money in this goal. She wants to know more. She wants to learn more. And I think that's been for us actually so incredible. I mean, we've had stories.
You have tier 2 and tier 3 cities also?
But we have a lot of metro women from metros. And look, we have a lot of rich women also investing on the platform. And the stories that we hear across the board. But I think when you hear stories where a woman is saying that, I'm the first woman in my family to buy a home, put a down payment on a home myself, and bought a home in my name. And my family has taken so much pride in it.
Wow.
There are women who will say that my parents are so proud of me that I've done this. I think it tells us, okay, what we are building and what we are doing is really worth all that effort.
Lovely.
So there are amazing stories. Once they start managing money, rich, middle income, low income women, I think that sense of the confidence, the sense of accomplishment, and that liberation, that sense of freedom.
Of course, you're not answerable to anybody.
That is unbelievable.
That's irreplaceable, that kind of freedom. But we should ask Preeti, what does she do when she's not investing money? What are your other interests, Preeti?
What are my other interests? So I of course sit on the boards of 2 Anand Rathi companies. So that still takes a little bit of my time. But a large part of me is a very sort of an artsy person inherited from my mom. So I love music. I have a small film company.
Really?
Which makes, I've made 2-3 films. Because to me, those are the
What
real
kind of
expressions.
What films?
So my first film was actually more an ode. So when I lost my mom very early on, she was very young. And the one thing she would tell all of us is, all 3 siblings, is that all of you've disappointed me. You've all gone into finance. None of you have taken, any sort of, arts as a field. And the first film I made was actually an ode to her. It was also catharsis for me. It was a film called Waiting, which had Nasirji and Kalki.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, it's a beautiful film. It's my.
Where can we watch it?
It's there on Hotstar.
It
you
is.
can watch it. Yeah,
Waiting.
It's
Waiting.
And the second film I made was a film called Karwa, which had Irfan Khan and
Yes,
Dulquer and Mithila Palkar. That was along with RSVP. So I to me, that's an expression. And the whole idea of filmmaking was really be able to say these, films are a great way, great
reach
medium
people, of course.
to reach out with a very strong and not preachy, but reach out with real life quirky problems we have. And, what is, Karwa was all about your relationship with your parents, right? How it undergoes that whole change of, where you hate your parents at times because they're telling you off. They're saying, don't do this, do this, right? To when you come a full circle and you realize, it's still the most sort of unconditional relationship that I've had. Waiting was all about, how we tend to sort of decide on, it's a story set in Kochi between this young girl who's, Kalki is this very social media savvy. She's like, I have so many followers on Twitter and I have so many followers on Instagram. And, her life is all about that glass bubble of social media. And Nasir ji is this English professor whose wife is in coma. And Kalki's husband has an accident and he's also in the same hospital. And they meet there. And how you're taking decisions on, can I actually be happy if my loved one is in coma? Can I take a decision on somebody's behalf of saying, should they get life support, should they not? It sounds very somber, like the backdrop, but that film was about those little moments, like, where she's ranting and she's saying, my husband is in hospital. I have so many followers on Twitter and not one of my friends have called me and asked me. And he turns around, he looks at her and he says, what is Twitter?
Oh,
it just
cute.
like it puts so many of these little moments that are funny and they put things. So so I do that as well. So that's
wonderful. I never knew that about you.
So that's
it's on her Wikipedia page.
On the Wikipedia, okay.
And I love music. I think that's something.
Do you sing?
I was trained Hindustani classical trained singer, but I gave it up along the way, pursuing all my other.
You plan to get
back?
back?
I've come back. Yeah, I've started doing a little bit of riyaz again.
Lovely.
So that's my go-to. And
one rapid fire.
Okay.
One thing every woman should stop telling herself regarding money.
I'm not good with money.
The worst advice anyone ever gave you on money?
The worst advice.
Or the worst advice you've heard people give, people who understand money, the worst advice they've given to women on money. What I meant is that...
The worst advice is men do it better. They do other things better, not money always.
I love the conviction with which she says it. Love it.
What should you tell your daughter, when she's growing up about money and money habits? One thing you tell her.
Life का भी पूछ लो यार.
Life का भी पूछ लेती हूँ, तुम पूछ लेना.
So I think every girl needs to be told that her life and managing her finances, her money is her responsibility.
Yeah.
She cannot depend on it
no matter who she
anybody.
Marries, yeah.
Lovely.
And managing your money is equivalent to your freedom.
Entrepreneurship. What is the thing you never knew about it before you got into it?
I think that every day is a new day. I think it's entrepreneurship is not for the faint-hearted.
Lovely.
And you have to have a lot of grit. There are more bad days than there are good days.
Oh, that's a good one.
And you have to be ready to spring back the next day and say, okay, I'll give it a try again today.
One word to define Preeti Rathi Gupta.
Fiesty. Love it.
Love it.
Too good. You're very good with the rapid fire.